So I've been covering the homeless situation in California from kind of a couple different angles. Now here's an article from The Guardian. Now The Guardian is a left-leaning paper, and I just want to show how bad the coverage is, how lacking information it is. So first of all, yes, they're going to say we have failed. How California's homeless catastrophe is worsening, which would basically jog some type of thoughts as in terms of, okay, so if what you're doing is making the homelessness situation worse, would you maybe try a different tact? Or how about they would even just address the issue of, I mean, there's a lot of factors that are going on over here, but all that they want to address is just the left talking points that they're, one, criminalizing the homeless people, which is bad. They're making it illegal for them to camp anywhere they want. And two, how they're not taxing enough and they're not building enough free housing. Both are kind of bogus points in my eyes. I mean, one, a lot of people are in California homeless just because they know they can do drugs in an open air drug market and just basically just go there to die. And obviously this is a horrible situation. It's not even good for the homeless people themselves. They kind of want help, but they know that, hey, I could just do drugs here and whatever, just do drugs here, just camp on the sidewalk and whatever, and then until because they're in such a terrible mental condition and shape that they're just accepted their fate. Now, you're not helping the homeless this way. This is actually cruel. But that goes against the left victim mentality that if you're homeless, you're a victim. Therefore, it's wrong for us to tell you what to do because victims can do whatever they want. And two is about taxing and spending and building enough affordable housing. Now, the numbers are completely don't shake out whatsoever. I've read reports that some housing units cost up to $800,000 to build. You're never going to build enough units. That's just mathematically impossible. So they should just, one, they need to do a competition where you have a whole bunch of companies making bids on how cheap they can make each possible unit if they're going to go that route, and get the units to maybe suspend some environmental regulations. Maybe they're the government. They have the power to do it. So you can bring the cost down to maybe around $50,000 a unit, which is a lot. You can house a lot more people that way. And if you would actually crack down on the camping and the loitering, well, a lot of people would probably. California is suffering from this homeless crisis because a lot of the homeless from around the country are going there because they know they get paid money, they get free food, it just basically, like, California is like the number one enablers of this type of behavior. So if they were to start cracking, first of all, what about the quality of life for the regular taxpayers? They need to, before all their complete high earners and taxpayers leave the state, which would leave them completely unable to deal with any kind of, completely shrink their budget. They need to protect their tax base and have improved quality of life for regular people. That means clearing out any kind of homeless camps. Clearing out the camps would force some people either to leave the state, and in that case, that's a good thing because that would spread the burden of housing homeless people, throughout the country. It's not going to be on just the California taxpayers to fix the whole problem by themselves. Indeed, some people would be forced into treatment, and there would be the type of programs that are proven to work, that if they do certain steps correctly and their reward would be to get a private room, then their reward would be to get possibly their own place, but it has to be like a reward thing. It's a lot of, I think the dogma right now on the left is People need to get housing first, no matter what their mental state is, which is if somebody's severely mentally ill, that's not going to work, and they don't have enough money to do the housing first or house everybody anyway. I've highlighted some things here, some points here. So, article starts out. But in the last 2 years, since California humanitarian catastrophe has worsened, death of people on the streets is rising, college students are living in their cars, more elderly residents becoming unhoused, encampments communities are growing at beaches, parks, highways, underpasses, lots, and sidewalks. Yes, and that's happening because people are if the encampments are growing, that's because the city is turning a blind eye in labeling them. And that's partly what they want. A lot of the social justice types, they think it's like a Christian religious type of thing, that it's like we're sinners, and it's basically like, hey, we're a capitalist society, we're greedy, and you should see your sins. You should be able to. You have to confront homelessness and suffering every time you step outside. California has the 5th largest economy in the world, a budget surplus, and the most billionaires in the U.S. and some of the nation's wealthiest neighborhoods. Here we go, some of the just Bernie Sanders talking points. Yet the richest of the Golden State have not yielded solutions to match the scale of the crisis that has been raging for decades. Pandemic-era programs have led to some success for slices of the unhoused population, but many measures have fallen short. Well, why does California have a surplus? Well, because of all the government money printing. That's basically squeezing the middle class. People can't buy anything, or people have to go without. So yes, I mean, it's the economics of the seen as unseen. While it's great that California thinks they have a budget surplus, but they don't see that a lot of middle class families lost buying power, making them poor. So there's no winner here. Meanwhile, homeless has become the top issue in political races, well, as it should. Polls in Los Angeles, which is home to 40% of the state unhoused population, suggest a majority of the voters want government to act faster, and the residents are angered by the immense human suffering caused by seemingly intractable crisis. But here's the thing. I thought the left is all about the science. They believe in science, unlike those evolution denying, rubes and conservatives. Then why don't they consult with economists and about housing? And it's like, oh, well, the huge solution would be to upzone. The government doesn't have enough money to build everybody like a free flat. What we have to do is use private investment. Unfortunately, a lot of like the NIMBYs and the people on the left or whatever, they care about, quote, neighborhood integrity, and they'll want to be upzoned. So, but the real solution would be to get rid of single-family housing zoning and then let people build by right 4 or 6 or 8 unit, 16 unit on one lot. That would bring the prices down dramatically, rental prices. In response, governments across the state are increasingly cracking down on people sleeping outside. Out of the 20 largest cities in California, the majority have either passed or proposal new laws banning camping. But then see, like, the opposite laws were passed. When I was living in LA, they passed a law where if a homeless person has a tent and shopping carts, they can't be thrown away, can't be confiscated. They just I've been there. It's not, none of this is, I mean, yes, every now and again they could possibly throw away or like clear out an encampment, but no. Most encampments that I'd see for years and years and years. Or have ramped up encampment sweeps. LA and Oakland passed laws meant to prohibit camping in certain zones. I mean certain zones. The whole area, the whole city should be a non-camping zone. San Francisco mayor has pushed for a police crackdown on unhoused people using drugs in the Tenderloin neighborhood. Fresno adopted a law to fine people up to $250 for entering certain restricted areas. Some of the unhoused people and civil rights activists warn that these escalating efforts to force people off the streets only further hurting the most vulnerable. We have failed in so many aspects. Theo Henderson, the Los Angeles advocate for the unhoused, who was living himself outside until recently, There are families with children living in automobiles. They're elderly and infirm on the street. It's dark time right now. The unhoused residents are very afraid. So yeah, I completely disagree with all this. This is just like everything that they do, they write. It's just completely should be backwards. California counted 160,000 unhoused people in the state January 2020, and the most recent data available. Well, just do the math. 160,000 people times $800,000 free loft. You don't have enough budget for that. It's impossible. You need to move on to Plan B. Of course, the Guardian will never point out the mathematically impossible that they're building homeless units are way too high of an expense. But I don't care. It's not about. This is just a tug at heartstrings. It's not about the numbers or a practical solution. So it goes into people dying on the streets, which yes, I believe, yeah, that's tragic, and the left is enabling this. A $14 billion investment, a crackdown on gambling. California's catastrophe stems in part from long-standing statewide housing affordability crisis. California spent significantly more of their income on housing compared to the rest of the nation. More than 1.5 million renters spent half of their earnings on rent, leaving them potentially one medical emergency or crisis away from homelessness. In recent years, income inequality has worsened. Although I would add that it's almost as a person that owns some real estate and rents it out, it's almost impossible to evict anybody for non-payment of rent or any other violation. So Emblem Medical that challenges California's signature homeless response during the pandemic. Project Roomkey. The project temporarily provided motel rooms to an estimated 50,000 living in the streets, but the program was administered at a local level, and some counties fell short of their goal or failed to meet demand in their regions. Participants reported struggling to find housing after hotel stays ended, and some returned to the streets because of the strict rules in the program, advocates said. Well, why doesn't maybe the article can list those strict rules? As in, like, maybe not doing drugs or drinking in the free unit. So yeah, that's part of the problem. A lot of these people need mental help. Of course, this article would not talk about the most important issue. That is, you can't just give there are a small percentage of people who that actually just be helped by just giving them a free place to stay. Most of these people have mental illness that needs medication or serious treatment, and of course they're not going to talk about that at all. So, but they're talking about irrelevant stuff that we could build so many units. Well, those people are not going to stay in the units. Unhoused people are blamed for every social ill, Henderson, who regularly talks to the unhoused residents on his podcast. There's an uptick in burglaries, and then the response is, can we get the unhoused removed? Every unhoused person has those stories. As soon as something happens, there comes the police looking for them as the prime suspect. Well, that's another thing. I mean, crime is up. I'm not 100% sure if the perpetrators are the homeless, but the soft on crime stuff has enabled the crime to go up. So the quality of living is getting worse and worse and worse for everybody. Why would they? How could they let this happen? It's what type of changes did they do? Probably like something like no cash bail, or just not prosecuting anybody for like shoplifting. Of course, that emboldens criminals. These people are getting what they want. The homelessness are getting moved away from the areas where there were most complaints. Don Toffee, 57, was living at an encampment near the stadium where the Super Bowl was held last month until she was forced to leave in advance of the big game. Officials said that residents were offered housing, but a month later, Toffee is camping down the street and still waiting for a housing voucher that could subsidize a rental. Quote, I'm getting old and I don't want to die in the streets. Adding that she didn't think of officials cared whether people like her got housing. They just want us out of eyesight. Yeah, it's a difficult. It doesn't have. I mean, it's a difficult situation, but it's made impossible with due to left wing ideology. If there was, I mean, there's definitely practical solutions, but some of the practical solutions, or the biggest solutions, would be actually doing things that lefties that would be counterintuitive to them. So this suffering, unfortunately, is keeps going.